Hi, Dr. Jim here with Class 6 on Love and Law. Before I get started in reviewing Ernest Holmes' chapters, pages 80 through 89, I think they're 80 through 89, let's check and see. Yep, page 81 through 89. What I want to do is go over the concept of first cause, relative first cause, and effect, and so on. So this shell represents first cause. It's just an image of that which we call the divine. And whenever it contemplates itself, in other words, God thinks of itself, it creates relative first cause, which of course can think of itself, and when it thinks of itself, it creates effect. Guess who you are? You're relative first cause. But there's a problem here. When you stop thinking about God as that expression that moves by means of you, and you start focusing on contemplating the effects of your life, it creates this separation between you and God. And in that gap, fear, worry, limitation, and concern are rampant. So the way we heal that is we get rid of that by contemplating first cause. When we contemplate first cause, of course, that reduces that gap, brings us back together with God, and then the effect of our life shifts into something quite uniquely different. So that's sort of how it works. Let's get started in reading. Love and Law, Part 1. The nature of spirit: active, self-conscious, creative nature, changeless reality, spirit, and action within itself. The definition of spirit. Spirit is the active and self-conscious principle. Spirit is first cause, or God, the absolute essence of all that is. It is the great or universal I am. Spirit is conscious mind and is the power which knows itself. It is conscious being. Spirit is self-propelling, self-existent, and has all life within itself. It is the Word, and the Word is volition. It has choice because it is volition. It is will because it chooses. It is free spirit because it knows nothing outside of itself, and therefore nothing different from itself. Spirit is Father, Mother, God because it is the principle of unity. A great idea. Spirit. Universal spirit, that which is everywhere at all times, self-propelling, self-existent, also associated with that thing which initiates life into being, your word. And your word is always a choice, and it's always a product of that which you choose, which is a part of your willpower. And it's always free, because believe it or not, there's only one thing you really know for sure, and that's what you think about yourself. That's what you know about yourself. And even though that might be distorted, and it might be sort of distracted from, the truth is, that's the principle that life is functioning as you. Reading on. Its creative nature. Perhaps the one point in which we are all agreed is that whatever the nature of first cause in spirit, it is creative. If this were not true, nothing could come into existence. It is impossible to think of creative life expressing itself other than in livingness. Jesus undoubtedly meant just this when he explained that he had come that they might have life and that they might have it more abundantly. The nature of first cause is that it is harmonious. If there were an element of discord or decay anywhere in its nature, it would destroy itself. The soul of the universe is that receptive medium into which the Spirit breathes forth the forms of its thought. It is subjective to the Spirit, and the subjective is always impersonal, neutral, plastic, passive, and receptive. The soul is called a blind force. Now, when we start to talk about spirit and soul, there's two different aspects of this. The spirit, first cause, is always functioning in harmony. It doesn't disagree with itself. If it could know anything negative, it would immediately destroy itself because it would have to. So the soul of the universe is that receptive medium into which the Spirit breathes the forms of its thought. So when you start thinking into that soul, then that automatically, that subjective power, which is impersonal, neutral, plastic, passive, and receptive, that blind force that automatically grows whatever seed you put in it. You know, if you put a watermelon seed in the soil, it has to grow watermelons. If you put anger in that receptive or that subjective part of you, it has to grow more anger. Something to really think about reading on. It's changeless reality. Creation does not mean making something out of nothing. Creation is the passing of spirit into form and is eternally going on. Spirit cannot change. For being all, there is nothing for it to change into. This is self-evident. It is the only active principle. self-conscious, self-knowing life, and that all is subject to its will. The spirit is conscious of its own thought, its own desire, its own manifest action, and it is conscious that its desire is satisfied. Consequently, it is conscious of that which it manifests, but it is not conscious of an effort or a process in its manifestation. Spirit without manifestation would construct only a dream. There must be a medium through which spirit manifests, hence soul and body. Spirit, soul, and body is also known as intelligence, substance, and form. Amazing. Spirit is conscious of only its own thinking. Now, it's really true. Truth be told, we and God are only conscious of that which we think, and that's because we manifest its experience, and it's without effort or process. Now, I know some of you might say, but there seems to be a lot of work in who I am and what I do. But it's only work because you believe it has to be work. You believe it has to be a struggle. When you believe that, then it has to appear exactly as you believe. But it's done without effort or process as far as spirit goes. And spirit without that soul is like a dream. So it doesn't do you any good just to think about the life you want to live. You have to carefully put it and purposefully put it into that soul through affirmative prayer, which we talk about in class, reading on. Spirit is an action within itself. God, the self-existent first cause, speaks and it's done. God's word is law. God is word. God is law. God is spirit. Spirit knows itself. The law is the servant of the spirit and is set in motion through its word. All law is some form of universal force or energy. Law does not know itself. Law knows only to do. It is the medium through which the spirit operates to fulfill its purpose. The whole action of spirit must be within itself upon the law, which is also within itself, and upon the universal stuff, which is also within itself. The three in reality are one, the Trinity. There's something called God that makes things out of itself by becoming the things it makes, according to law and order. As nearly as the intelligence of the human race is able to judge, spirit creates by contemplation. Amazing stuff. The action of spirit is within itself, which is within the law, which is within the substance of life. It's only acting within itself. And it's always in perfect law and order. And it makes stuff out of itself, just like we make stuff out of ourselves. We make a life out of who we are. And who we are, guess what, is informed by either spirit or race mind. So you don't want to be paying attention to the effect of life, because that's what creates that separation. You want to be paying attention to the cause. Recognize that cause and learn to think from cause, not effect. Reading on. Love and Law, Part 2. How it operates. Principles and being, metaphysics and physics, one mind. The personalness of God. How it operates. The philosophy of applied metaphysics rests upon 2 or 3 very simple theoretical propositions. All invisible principles are theoretical, in that we cannot appraise them without our physical senses. We cannot weigh and measure them. Life, love, and beauty may be considered theoretical, in that no one has ever seen them. We see only their manifestations. But because of such manifestations, we reason that the reality exists. Metaphysical work rests upon the theory that the universe is a thing of absolute intelligence, that this intelligence is self-existent. Spirit was not created. It was, is, and ever will be. We are compelled to assume the actuality of an original creative energy and intelligence, before which nothing comes. God, or universal life, is an original, uncreated, changeless being, not a being with parts, but a being with potentialities. There is a vast difference. The infinite thinker thinks, and what follows is in a sequence of law and order, of cause and effect. The infinite thinker in movement is principle. The being of the infinite thinker is pure spirit and may be thought of as an infinite or abstract essence of concrete personality and cause of all objective and subjective manifestation. Wow! The universe is a thing of absolute intelligence. It is the original creative energy. It wasn't created, it just is. Now, I know sometimes that's hard to accept, but it's true. And it's not being of parts. All these things that I'm talking about happen simultaneously, instantaneously. Those potentialities are with us forever. But we can't bring them into expression unless we let that thinker move by means of that principle through our own mind. bringing to us a greater sense of personal experience of love. Reading on. Metaphysics and physics. God thinks, and as a result, law is set in motion in a field of cause and effect. The only thing that is spontaneous is the creative thought itself, the contemplation of spirit. All things in the physical world, or the world of form, are in vibration and are in effect. This is the result of an infinite thinker thinking mathematically. And anything the mind thinks, it can unthink. What is set in motion can be changed. The truth known is demonstrated simultaneously and instantaneously. To be self-conscious is to be a spiritual entity. Mind, in its self-conscious form, cannot be differentiated from spirit. Mind, in its subjective or subconscious state, is the law of spirit. Men or women are spirit, while God is the spirit. You are individual, while God is the universal. This is what Jesus meant when he said that each has an inherent life within themselves. The meaning of inherent life is creative life. The mind of each person is an extension of the eternal mind or spirit, and each person's evolution is unfolding in this everlasting mind or spirit through his or her thought. Okay, spirit is conscious of only one thing, itself. We are conscious of only one thing, truly ourselves. We think about effects, we think about stuff, we think about circumstances, we think about conditions. But the truth is we're individualizing those experiences inside of ourselves. So we have to be very cautious and recognize that the responsibility to change our mind always lives as the potential to change our lives. But to change your mind, I know sometimes you got to go against that emotional pushback, which is that sort of race mind consciousness, which says you can't do that, you can't be that, you're not trained, you're too old, you're too young, you're the wrong gender. Who knows what the limitation is? But that's separation. When you connect with God, you individualize that creative force, and then when your thought becomes very powerful, then you become, you know what I call you, useful people, which means that your faith always affects the faith of others. Reading on. One mind. There is no such thing as your mind, or my mind, and God's mind. There's only mind, in which we all live and move and have our being. Things are ideas in form. What else could they be? There is nothing from which to make things except ideas. In the beginning, we behold nothing visible. There is only an infinite possibility, a limitless imagination, a consciousness. The only action of consciousness being idea. That which we call our subjective mind is, in reality, our identity in infinite mind. It is the result of our mental attitudes. Our subjective mind is a mental atmosphere or center in universal subjective mind in which are retained all of the images, impressions, inherited tendencies, and race suggestions. Our subjective mind is the medium through which experiences come to us. Soul and spirit intersphere each other, and both have omnipresence. The spirit of the universal permeates the soul of the universe, forever impregnating it with ideas. The body of the universe is the result of the thought of spirit operating through the medium of the soul. The Father is absolute, positive intelligence. The Son is the offspring of the Father, and the Holy Ghost is the servant of the eternal Spirit throughout the ages. You know, sometimes it takes a little bit of work to connect all the verbiage from various religious backgrounds into that perfect understanding that our teaching offers us. When soul and spirit, which I love, this is like soul, this is like spirit, when they intersphere, it like opens both of them up into a whole nother potentiality, which in that medium of the soul automatically begins to create and produce exactly what we put into it. But we have to remember, retained within that subjective or that subconscious is the impressions, images, and inherited tendencies and race suggestions. So even though we can intersphere with great new ideas, we have to remind ourselves that those old ideas, we have to neutralize them. And we'll talk more about that. But here Ernest Holmes is saying the Father is absolute, which means, and you can use authority. The authority is absolute. And the offspring of that authority is, of course, the Son, or the relative first cause, which is then served by this wonderful eternal Spirit throughout the ages. Reading on. The personalness of God. Spirit is absolute intelligence, operating through the soul of receptive intelligence, impregnating it with the divine ideas. We should think of God not only as principle, forever pushing forward into expression, but as infinite person. If we only think of the abstract principle as mathematical law of cause and effect, we shall lose all warmth and color. Don't abstract the principle and forget the essence. There's something in the human mind that desires to think of God or spirit as person. This deep urge, which has been reality since time began. There's an inherent necessity for warmth and color. The universe is more than an inexorable law of cause and effect. Personality cannot emerge from a principle which does not contain the inherent possibility of personality. In each person, something is personalized, and that which is personalized is personal to its own personification. Spiritual evolution should make the infinite not more distant, but more intimate. Here we come to it. And here it is, this concept that we want to think of this presence of the divine as a personality that has warmth. And the way you think of it is by thinking of it in terms of the principles or the verities that we talked about. It's a personality that has life and love and light and peace and beauty and joy and truth in infinite supply. When we focus on that persona as that which we see as a warm, loving expression, then it's kind of like the prodigal son returning to that authority, that father figure. But remember, we're not talking about gender here. We're talking about the idea that there's something within us which has that authority, which we must always bring ourselves back to. It knows who we are, it created us, and it created us with an infinite potential. So let's not be distant from it. Let's be intimate with it. Affirmative prayer. The presence of God is real, validating, and always creating. Life is a blessing that flows from the divine into expression through the law. I am the love of God bringing new and creative ideas into expression. God created my life so I might know the perfect experience of God's love. Right now, my experience is guided by peace and abundance. All that I encounter and attract helps me grow and expand into an ever greater sense of joy. My being is God's being, magnified by perfect joy. There's no power in assumptions or opinions. The power is in my faith, acceptance, and belief. Thank you, God, for all of my blessings and the complete manifestation of this word. Released, my word is the law in motion, and so it is. And here's some wonderful affirmations. You can just read them along. Read along with me. Today, Spirit is the active and self-conscious power of my life. Number 2, today I am the creative response to Spirit's perfect intelligence. Number 3, today my creation is making my life out of the invisible power of principle. Number 4, today God is the word and the receptive servant of all I believe. Number 5, today divine power of my life energizes the experience of love, abundance, and peace. Today, God thinks by means of me, and more good than I have ever known is expressed and received. Number 7, today, my mind and God's mind are one. All that I can imagine that serves the highest ideal is now effortlessly working through me, for me, and as me. You are Spirit in action. Remember I said in class there's the big S, and there's the little s. That big S is the universal, and the little s is us, individualizing that universal as that mentality which has the power to choose and initiate. And when we choose and initiate our relationship with God, we close the gap. When we close the gap, we immediately sensitize ourselves to God's amazing gifts. Your life is an amazing gift. Always live it that way. Always see it that way. It'll never let you down. God bless.